Welcome and hello. Good afternoon from Amsterdam, where we are broadcasting live our third year of Forbo Flooring Systems webinars on the built environment and how this affects us as human beings. In this session, I will be talking to two guests where the topic of today is trends in the built environment. This time, our webinar will be slightly different. We have an external expert who will give his view on the big events, trends worldwide, and we will have one of our Forbo colleagues, Dorothé Kessels, who will be looking at trends in translation in our Forbo world, the world of floor covering. Let me start by introducing Jan Agelink. Jan Agelink is a trend forecaster since 1994. He analyzes global and local trends in fashion, lifestyle, design, health, interiors, retail and food. He's looking at the major drivers like technology, ecology, economy and so forth. We will be exploring how trends are being identified. We will let you know what the key trends for 2022 and beyond are. And finally, we will let you know how we as Forbo incorporate these trends in flooring. Jan, who is Dutch, who has his own company, is joining me in the studio and will start his presentation in about a few seconds. But Jan, let me first ask you, 1994, that's a long time ago. What was the first trend that you actually identified at that time?
Well, in that time we were getting out of a period for home interior trends that was about cocooning, and we were transforming it into nesting. We were all about exploring, so the home was more of a nest where we flew out and in of.
It's interesting. You also mentioned to me a little bit when we were talking that there was one other trend that was already present there, and we're particularly interested in that one as well.
Yeah, I can remember in that time already sustainability was a topic in trend land, and we can see that it's the biggest trend at this moment, the biggest driver. It's also in my presentation.
Very interesting to hear. I'm very curious to see and hear your presentation. You at home will be sitting in front of your laptop or your computer screen, but you're not alone. You have some 450 colleagues all over the world who are joining you and now listening to Jan Agelink and his vision on Trends 2022. Jan, go ahead.
Thank you. So very welcome to my presentation of today. I will be talking like 15-20 minutes about global trends, more consumer and society trends, translating it also into product trends. It's about 15-20 minutes how long it will take. And when we start a creative process, I think any creative profession does it like this. They start by looking at visuals. Inspiring visuals, and we found this visual of an artist who is making clouds. He's making clouds in an interior, so they're gone after a couple of seconds, and we were very, very attracted to this image because it also connected really well to the content we want to perceive for this season, we want to bring over for this season, which is all about bringing a lighter footstep on the earth. Also thinking about in a circular way about products and materials is very important, and thinking about interiors in an elastic, flexible way I think is also very much important, and is a trend that has risen the last 2 years very much during the pandemic because we want to be multifunctional at our homes. And last but not least, we really want to have a home that is also adventurous. We really want to have a home that has an interior that has something to do with fantasy and magic, so escapism is quite important. So we called our presentation Living Light. A home is really very much in transit at the moment, and the artwork is from Bernard Smilde. Another big trend driver on a global scale is of course our worry about the climate crisis. And we see a lot of, actually it's the first driver of consumers on the moment and also of designers. So we couldn't actually also, when we saw last year the news about the UN climate country of parties and saw that there was so lack so little rules and measurements taken for the future. We were really very surprised, and especially when we saw this image, which really stuck in our mind, which is about the minister of Tuvalu, who is standing at a point where 5 years ago we were standing on the beach. Now he's staying in the water, and online he gave his speech, which really made an impression. And I think a lot of people around the world were getting more awake with this image. So it's not only him that's standing in the water, we are also standing in the water. And we went to a couple of design weeks last season. The first one was Dutch Design Week in Eindhoven. And it was nice to see that it was a lot about sustainability. Their umbrella theme was the greater number. And the greater number is about what's the perfect balance for the earth, for population, for housing, for stuff, that we don't overeat this planet time and time again. So we have to learn as population, as Earth population, we have to learn to reset our minds to degrowth, to be more in balance. And there's an artist in Holland, he's called Arna Hendrix. He is a speculative artist, and he makes these kinds of artwork about the incredible shrinking man, for example, where he supposes a future where we don't grow anymore, but we shrink. And because we're shrinking, we're using less raw material and less product. So he has a pivotal a role during the design week, where he had a little village with all kinds of ideas, where you could see examples where you can implement these kinds of ideas of outgrowing and degrowing and shrinking. Also, there were some examples of how we are addicted to growth. Every time a new Eames chair comes out, it's 5 or 10 centimeters bigger than the last one. So that's something we really have to unlearn. There was also really a lot to do about the afterlife of a product. We see at designers, at studios, at brands, that thinking about the life of a product is not enough. We also have to think what happens with the product when it's the end of the use. So this chair, a Dutch chair, is the first deposit chair in Holland. So every time the chair is broken or you had enough of it, you can bring it back or send it back to the factory, and you guaranteed get 20 euros back, which I think is really a nice idea to develop these kinds of ideas. And the material is all recycled materials also, where the chair is made from. So flexibility in product level, but also flexibility in floor planning, in interior architecture, is something that's rising and rising. We're seeing these kinds of ideas, floor plan ideas that are flexible, that breathe with the function you have during the day. So this Australian interior architecture bureau has made cupboard walls that can be hybrid, that are modular, that are flexible. So we have play modes during the day, we have office modes during the afternoon, and night modes with bedrooms. New ideas for new growth, also because we have scarcity of space and urban housing on the moment in almost every city in the world. The second consumer trend we've called Symbiocene, and Symbiocene is a speculative geological era we're working towards to. It's all about regenerative design. Actually, we're now in the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is an era where we live amongst our own waste. Actually, it doesn't sound very good. It isn't also. We're doing urban mining. We're trying to reuse waste, but we want to go to an era where we are more in sync with nature. So regenerative design will accomplish that. Then we're talking about renew, reuse, and grow. Ideas of this regenerative design are, for example, this living coffin that is made by a designer with mycelium that is grown into a mold. In 2 weeks you have a complete coffin. If you're buried into it, you also will be purified, because you're quite toxic when you die, through the mycelium, and you'll be richer fertilizer also for the earth. And as a really magical accent, this designer also puts in some seeds from mushroom that glow in the dark, so you don't need a tombstone, but you have some glow in the dark mushroom for people to recognize where you're buried. So the idea of what the journey is from our raw material to our end product is really vital to understand, to let people, consumers, understand also what the price is they pay for a product. This need of the traveling of our materials, our products, is, for example, very well shown in this brand, Sheep Inc. They make knitwear, And this knitwear is made through regenerative farming. Sheep on regenerative farmlands in New Zealand are making this wool, and also only solar energy is used to make this product. So when you buy a product from this brand, you will not produce carbon, but you will consume carbon. So, and that's their marketing. Their marketing story is also this journey. And if you want to know more about it, on every item they sell, they have this tag, this button, and it's incorporated with an NFC tag, which is a near field communication chip. And if you put your phone on it, it will direct you from your product all the way back to the sheep that produced your wool. And you can also actually see where the sheep is hanging out now. So all through the blockchain, this technology will give transparency and also awareness to the consumer. So these are just two consumer society trends that direct our themes. And to conclude, to summarize, we're talking about outgrowing as a new mindset for economy for our future generations, about circular producing, where we think about the afterlife of the product, where we use waste over and over again. It's about elastic homes, to breathe with the rhythm of your life, of your day, and also to make more room of the scarce space that we have. And it's about regeneration of products, so thinking about renew, reuse, and grow. So I made two themes for you to view it, to get inspired by. The first one is living craft, where we make everything from waste material. It's very playful. We see a younger generation really being occupied with these kinds of improvised artisanal ways of design almost. And we're talking about more flexible modular homes. We're talking about home hubs. The second theme is called living systems, where it's all about getting the outdoor indoor, where it's all about growing materials, growing products. So we have this natural atmosphere, and we call it the biosphere. We'll start with living craft. Living craft, I really like the word tinkering. We see a lot of the last 2 years graduates who are tinkering with materials they find in their home, in their studio. It's very local. Everything's very local, and it's very improvised. So it's very much also about everyday design, utility design. This was the first online presentation of this collective designers 2 years ago, and they made also this really fun online exhibition where they didn't show the 3D models of their products, but they cut it out of paper just also to play with the image. I really like this whimsical way of thinking of this really generation who has to improvise also so very much. So there was a lot of waste design, so people are improvising also as a design language. We see it very much. We see it on product level, but we also see it on urban level, that this playfulness is quite interesting. We were inspired by the Rebuild the World campaign from Lego. They have this global campaign just recently launched, and they go to primary schools. This time they went to London to primary schools, and they asked children, build your most ideal building for the city. So you get a lot of buildings with cupcake stores and trampoline parks and greens. And then the architects render it back into the city they know, and then they present it to these children, which was really a very fun thing to see, but also very inspiring almost for adult architects, as it were. So actually also this is not so far away from reality, but because we see, because of the scarcity, that we are moving into more experimental architecture. This is the second version already from this container atlas from Gestalten. And that's all about how can we make more fabulous prefab. Actually, that's also how they call it, fab prefab. And we're seeing a lot of construction materials and constructions also showing in the end result. So it's very free, it's very deconstruct construct, and it's also it has this industrial feel. Also, product designers are looking at archetypes, industrial products, and elevate them into more upgraded items you can use in your interior. So we're very much inspired by uniforms, utility, public space, for color blocking, for product. It's a lot of, also has a little bit of a retro kind of atmosphere. We're seeing this graphic way of design language also being important for flooring, but also for patterns on wallpaper, making it also a little bit of a vintage feeling. We're seeing houses that are very playfully designed interior-wise. A lot of steps, modular steps, but also steps that are almost half mezzanines or in between floors. Also color signaling them so that we can know what kind of function it has for resting or for entertainment. And of course also the home office is important here. And we see a lot of furniture and built-in kind of interior design that reveals home offices, and also working with colors to make the function very clear in those kinds of things. So this modular, this flexible, this elastic way of thinking, so we can concentrate also in our homes. And we really predict also that this home working is going to stay for a longer time. And because we know that it's working, we know now in experience, in the practice, that it has value. But we need to have some isolation to do this. But not too much. We also want to keep on track. So people are also designing, designers are also making these kinds of furniture to keep an eye on you when you're dozing off. It will blink an eye or cough a little bit to keep you on track. So to conclude this living craft ideas, we're seeing that we play a lot with waste and image. It's very optimistic and playful and bold kind of design language, where we see also this bricolage idea of architecture being important, uniformity, utility. Everyday design is interesting, and a kind of retro kind of feeling for patterns. And also this kind of responsive design is interesting. Then for the second theme. For the second theme, we're going more to outdoor, that's also incorporated in indoor. So it's very much living architecture we see here, but it's also some technological newness at the end of this theme. A lot of interior design studios, architecture studios are designing now, because we experienced that we had a lack of it, more nature into our home. So a lot of loggias, indoor balconies with a lot of greens, almost life-size terrariums we feel are important. So we need purification through real green elements in our surfaces, in our balconies, in our walls, in an almost streamlined kind of way. So we're resembling a lot of nature. We're seeing also real nature being experimented by young designers, these kinds of screens that divide a room from real plants and also purify the air. We're seeing a lot of rugs. Rugs, I think, is so important for interiors at the moment, and they're also very much inspired by the landscape, like you see here, like a farm field. And then next step in this is that we find nature that's designing itself. We're seeing some companies that are, for example, this one in the UK, full grown, is growing trees in the shape of chairs. So you have to wait a little bit, but then you have a beautiful chair that will be your heirloom for your children and their children. It's a long waiting list for a chair. It's like for 3 years. But I really like the idea of harvesting a total, complete product. And we see lots of designers playing with these ideas. Of course, also here the journey is important to in your marketing, in your campaign, tell about the bio-based ingredients that you use for your products in this way. Another mixture of all these elements is these kinds of ideas of architects from Australia. They are suggesting to have more of a free scale open plan for your future housing and interiors, where you have a mixture of natural materials, industrial materials and design items to make new kinds of zones in an area, privacy zones, different climate zones, gathering zones, for a whole new idea of mixing indoor with outdoor. Of course, when you have such an open house, you need the climate, but we also see it in more Nordic climates like this. Elements that are natural, that are feeling like building bricks, that have fossilized patterns are important. Some resemblance, reflecting of nature is important for sky, but also stone. All kinds of veins are important as patterns. And this I really like. This is more technology thinking about nature. It's Marjan van Aubel. She's a Dutch designer, and she only makes things that are powered by solar technology. So this is a really thin, there's some sort of poster, translucent, and it gears up energy. It soaks up sun during the day, and in the evening it will beam this light back into you in a very subtle, friendly colorways. So For the future, we see a lot of ideas where we invent, where we invest in new ecosystems that are autonomous and work together with us, like this beautiful exhibition we saw in the Tate Modern in London about speculative new forms of life that will accompany us on our way to the future. So, to conclude this theme, we really need to design our interior architecture that is free and permeable, that we have some living design to purify our air, using nature as a tool, of course with bio-based materials, giving our interior an organic assemblage with fossilized prints, with reflecting of nature, and using new natural energy and new technologies to create new ecosystems. So thank you very much for your attention, and this was my presentation.
Thank you very much, Jan. It's very interesting to hear about the changes that are taking place in our society. You talk about trends in the built environment and you give very clear examples of them. Are we able to witness them now as we live, or do we need to go to the design extremes to see the images that you have just shown us?
No, I really think this is a reality on this moment. When I talked about the design weeks, the several design weeks in Milan and Eindhoven that were last half year. In Eindhoven, for example, there was a real bio-based house. Every item used in this house was bio-based. And so the reality is that the industry is already there. And I think the implementation is something that needs to be thought of. Also, designers and stylists are all, I think, with the knowledge of all these new technologies.
If we look at the past period, the 2 years that we had the COVID pandemic, of course, there will be people who say, oh, we discovered new trends like working at home and cocooning and nesting even, like 1994. But in a way, has not the world of trends stood still for 2 years? And are we now in a buzz period again?
No, really not. I think there are two sectors that are really developed more during this pandemic. There was the sustainability again, because we realized that we are so fragile, being so overpopulated, and with all these dangers coming from the nature and medical side. But also the digitalization is really accelerated highly. We're talking now in a webinar, so that we didn't even discuss today because we don't have time. But that's also something that really is changing our environment also for the interior design.
Well, there will be time because the second half of this webinar is open to you, the public. You can ask questions to Jan, but also to our next guest, Dorothé Kessels, who I said, who is a colleague of mine. She is head of global design at Forbo Flooring Systems. She's a graduate of the Eindhoven Design Academy, has worked in the field of design by gaining international experience in the development of surface designs, color collections for cladding, textiles and the paint industry. And Dorothé has been working with Forbo since 2005. And Forbo is a company who, in its corporate vision, has identified design as a key differentiator for success, which is anchored in our DNA and for which we as Forbo are recognized, I think. Dorothé, very good to have you here. You're not in the studio, you are in Holland, but we are talking via a digital link, which is also something which we have grown used to during the period of COVID. Question for you, looking at the presentation of Jan, which is all about space up in the air, it's wide, it's open, and you are with Forbo and you have to look at the floor all the time. How is that for you to make that translation to floor covering designs and the world of design trends?
Yeah, thank you, Willem, for asking. Of course, it's our job to do that, to translate it. And in fact, what I'm going to present you is a trend report that we make internally, because we get inspired by the report of Jan, which we actually follow every year or every season. But we do make our own trend reports to identify these trends that are most relevant for us, for Forbo. So we do that with a reason, and we do that with a reason internally. that we want to inspire our internal designers, which are in France, which are in the UK, which are in the Netherlands and the US, that we get this common source of inspiration, that we can translate these trends to our flooring products.
So
And
you're now,
sorry, go ahead.
so you're now going to give us an insight in what we as Forbo are using to identify our new collections, our new color ranges, using our Forbo annual trend report.
Exactly,
Okay.
and I'm going to show that by examples, because I think one of the target is a Forbo to inspire our target audience.
Okay.
Inspire them with nice references of flooring, how these floor integrate into a total interior, because we are one part of the total interior, and how it fits with all the rest of the
Okay.
products like furniture. Well, as said, this trend report is to identify the most relevant trends for Forbo. And it also ensures that we will be recognized with our design signature. Because when you look at this trend report, it's developed by Marijke Griffioen and Thomas Eurlings. I'm going to put on the next slide, if that's possible. Yes, there it is. They developed this trend report with the content. And the content is that our personal health and well-being has become top priority. Well, it's connected very much to the already what Jan has been explaining, but we know that during COVID it's been even more important to focus on our personal health and well-being. Because we construct our buildings and we design our cities from the built environment, from the outside, but also from the inside. And I think the inside plays a significant role in the way to feel safe, secure, and healthy. So that's very much reflected in the buildings of today. What you see here is a journey. You go from the inside, from urban environment to the outskirts of a rural environment. So in fact, all of these steps, all of these scenarios are connected with nature, with this inside-outside feeling that makes you feel good, better, and safe. And when I show you the overview of this whole trend report, it has many chapters, and every chapter has its own sort of content. Because in the middle, you see there that we show the products of Forbo. We show them in the context of also the pictures that you see. So interior examples, how our floors work in this and in this setting, and also the colors. And these colors are connected to a global color card. We have an internal global color card that we work on with designers, and this trend report influences this color card. So every year we update it, we see the trends, and we, for instance, add more green colors as we've done in the last report. So for us, it enables as well to make this common Forbo signature, and that is products across the categories vinyl, mammalian and textile, that they make a nice match together when they are shown in this way. So what I will explain to you is only 4 of the themes, just to focus on the rooftop, the greenhouse, the flower bed, and the landfill. So the first theme is the rooftop. And the rooftop is more and more explored as a natural extension of a building. It's easily gained space that can function maybe as a raised garden, as an office sky room, maybe as a playground for children, or outdoor sports facilities. It's an area where the open air and the connection with nature is direct, and you really feel the breeze, you have the connection with the daylight. And we connect this rooftop theme very much to building blocks. So essential building blocks to make this construction visible. The use of bricks, it's popular, and we use it as a color scheme for this mood board that you see here, which is based in fact on the warm colors, on the earthy tones. For instance, in the middle you see the mammalian wall tone, which is actually the burden red, which is an older goldie, but it fits perfectly well into this color scheme, together with the warmer, say, concrete colors that have a sort of a warm tone in it. And then on top you see a vivace, which actually has this gray color with a warm undertone that fits so nice with the theme. this building blocks was visualized by a student where we collaborate with, a student of Sweden. And she made these these designs for the floor in a constructive way. So all these elements are made with aquajet, and it formed this pattern for this inspiring combination in the mammalian colors. So we thought it fit very well with this theme of the rooftop. Then we have the greenhouse. And the greenhouse is really this symbiosis between a half building and half a garden. It's where the natural daylight comes in, it's filled with plants, and it's this connection, where it's so obvious, in fact, to have the connection of the greenhouse with the outside. You see it more and more in buildings, as Jan already said, that this glass, the use of constructions, even putting whole greenhouses in a building environment, in, for instance, an office, that is really of today. The colors, the materials are soft, based on green tones that combine very well together with natural materials, wood tones. It really evokes this atmosphere. And then I have a few examples of projects that are existing at the moment. One is in Milano. Milano is it gives a lot of attention to this, that the green is integrated into the built environment. And this is really where the landscape is coming into the building, where the two building blocks on the right and the left, these are concrete with green elements, that this bridge going from one building to the other is this green oasis. And that's actually the same with this building in Paris. You see here that the building is constructed in a very open way. And the inside, which is interesting, it's a residential building. And in the residential building, in the inside, you see it's sort of a micro village within the city. It's meant to be to socialize for people, to gather, to have a contact with each other, and not only for the people who live there, but also for the people that from outside can visit this building. So it's very interesting how this garden integrates with the building environment. We thought it was a very nice bridge to go to this project, which is actually a Forbo in a children's hospital, in where in fact these micro landscapes are integrated in the floor panel, and in the whole building from roof to top, you see it integrated, that children feel much more secure and safe, and don't feel so sick when they are in a nice environment. That's the same with this example of the vertical farm. It's built out of elements, of building blocks that can be constructed in different ways. And it's meant to be also a physical and a mental connection with nature. So what people do, they grow their own gardens, they grow their own veggies, and therefore they get a much better connection with the circle of the environment and the circle of nature, because they see that nature, they see that plants growing. And it brings them closer to nature. And also what you see here is that wood is the main construction of this building. Wood is becoming, in fact, the new concrete, like having the wood as a renewable material for building constructions. Here you see again the inside of the building, where almost the green merges with the building itself and is overgrowing. And then some examples again of where our products have been used. This is an informal setting in an office, where you see the light coming in, where you see the greenhouse elements, the green used. So it's much more informal. The green helps to give this element of nature. And that's been used already in our campaign of 2019, where we situated the photography in Hortus Botanico, which is in Amsterdam, where we already use this greenery setting for the campaign of Mammalian. And as well to the left, which is the same campaign, as to the right, where all the elements of the interior, like the lamps, the floor, the furniture, is giving this real natural feel. That's the same with the picture to the right, where you get this natural feeling of daylight coming in. And this is maybe straightforward. Of course, by using Mammalian, which is a true CO2 neutral product, people can already have a good benefit on the way they use sustainable products. This is quite obvious because they use the green colors, but what you see is by using the daylight coming in and having this whole reflection in the school, even to the ceiling that becomes green, you get this ambience of nature in a very direct way. But yeah, designers and architects become very creative in the way they translate this this feeling of greenery into the interior. Then I go to the next theme, which is the flower beds. And flower beds is a very positive theme. It's connected to our love for nature, which is directly visible in the flower pattern. It's this multi-sensual experience. The moment you already see a flower, you seem to smell it because it's so tactile. It has this multi-sensorial experience, and it's where you merge the real with virtual. That can be done with our products in an easy way because, in fact, we have some products where we can print on every image. That means that a very natural image like a flower can be printed on our products. And in fact, when you look at the mood boards, it's cheerful, colorful, contrastful, with a lot of elements that are exciting to use. And this is in fact a sort of a preview on the printing of the Flotex and the vinyl. We will print these kind of flowers and a lot more on our new collection for the digital library. There will be a new concept coming on in June with floral concepts for the floor. So that's a sort of a sneak preview that I wanted not to miss out. And then the theme landfill. I think that's one of the most important themes for Forbo, because we know that waste, as Jan already said, it's recategorized. It's the raw material is really getting a new value, and the circular economy has benefits to it to make it like not greenwash, but make it like a real sustainable product. And in fact, we have a winner there in our hands with Mammalian, but we do the same with our other products, that we are aware of how we produce it, how we generate our waste, how we are visible and transparent with the way we communicate about what we do. So these design values have become really different in the sustainability proposition. And one of the products that we already have in our collection is the Mammalian Cocoa. And what you see here is that the ingredients come from a production process, which is actually in the same area in the Netherlands above Amsterdam, from the cocoa, and where the waste materials are integrated into the floor products. In fact, it gives this sort of tactility, this material expression, which is much more sensorial. And we already have people that are Mammalian Cocoa fans that adore our products, and therefore, by this storytelling, by telling the story where it comes from and how we construct it, we get this emotional connection even to our products, that people love the product because of the story. And we see that here as well in the school, where in fact the use of colors, the use of materials empower this whole message of green and happy to be in, to work in. People and students for sure can much better concentrate in these areas where the designing and the coloring is in a done in a nice way. And that's the same here, use of wood, use of natural materials like a cocoa on the floor. That's some good examples. We have some big brands who do that. Of course, Nike, who's reusing the material into, well, a new shoe, in fact, going from shoe to shoe, but you can do it also in a different way, that you look at how a product is being constructed, like this flat image that can be constructed in a very easy way, much easier than if it's three-dimensional. And then that's the same with Hermes. We know that leather is one of the most polluted products, in terms of production process. So they were looking at alternatives. Could, in fact, a very iconic bag like this one, which is worth a lot of money, would it have the same value if it was made out of mushroom instead of leather? And that's an interesting thinking, an interesting thought, if it has fact, on the value of a product or not. And we've done, in fact, the same. We have a lot of innovations going on, get a lot of material experimenting, and this was one of them, experimenting with flexible linoleum, which is in fact a furniture linoleum which is more flexible, has other properties. And because of the other properties, we asked students to have a look at it. They displayed something at the furniture fair in 2020, but also last year we had students of the Netherlands who were looking at what can this material do, what other properties does it have. So for us, it's a learning curve to work with students and also to continue with this flexible linoleum, because it gives us other possibilities. As well with Vitra, iconic, known, share, design icon, which is made of reused material. And that's interesting because it looks the same, but the story is completely different. One of our examples, which is actually made of homogeneous vinyl. What you see in the design is in fact that the particles are visible in the design. So you actually see that it's made of reconstructed material, because this is leftovers from our production process. All these colors, we do have them, and now by putting them into the floor, it makes the story complete, which is interesting. And then just a brief link to the terrazzo designs that we just introduced. Terrazzo is also made of waste materials, in fact. You put these leftovers together, you make a smooth floor, and then you have this colorful visual. So it's sort of a side step going to terrazzo. One of the big projects we are working on is the linoleum recycling project with Christine Meidersma. And she's the queen of investigation, going really from research from the beginning to a new product. And that's what she's done with our color card. In fact, she looked at the product and she made a new construction out of it by, again, grinding it into our machine. So she took the samples and looked at what happens if we grind it again to a new color. And in fact, the impact on color was maybe a little bit, surprising, but for sure the impact on the material, because on the left you see the material how it was, and then it was again calendared in our machine like the right product, and the properties of the product were even changing. So it became a bit more hard, a bit more ceramic-like, which is interesting for us to see how that works in the whole system. Because here you see how it's been visualized in the manufacturing process of a company. Because in fact, that's what we are. We are still a manufacturer of floor coverings, and because sustainability is in the heart of a company and we want to have it in our DNA, this is where we can differentiate ourselves by looking at what are the possibilities by making our products also valuable for the future generation, that we think with partners of the processes that we've done, the experiments that we've made to make our products good for a better future. Because I think that counts, and that is the most valuable thing, to have products that have a good story, but also are very good for the future. So in fact, that brings me back to the 9 themes, waarvan I only highlighted 4. So here are the 5 left. If you want to see them, they are visible on our website. We have the whole story behind it, but I'm not going to go into detail because I want to bring you back from this inner circle of the city, the courtyard, to the outer countries of the farmland and the field. So this is my journey, and I'm going to stop presenting. I want to thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Dorothé. Very interesting to see how you can make the translation from, let's say, the building and construction world, where obviously we are a part of, to what our business is, which is floor covering. And to have a story that actually makes the floor covering a basis to, let's say, the design that you see when you enter a room. I was just wondering, I know that you're also still a freelancer for some Asian customers of yours. Is the story that you tell in Asia about trends in floor covering design the same as you just shown us, or are there some tweaks, are there some differences, or is it global?
Well, when it comes to the trend of sustainability, they're really far ahead. They're really eager to become better. But when you look at the trends as we show now, I think for the moment they're still a follower in what they see. But the next generation of designers, of creative people, they will certainly have their own influence. And I don't think that will take so much more longer, one generation, until they develop the trends, and maybe we're going to look at their trends instead of the other way around.
So it's really
that's very interesting to see that happen.
It's really going to be a globalized idea of trends in building and construction.
Yeah, I think in building construction, they look very much at the functional properties at the moment. But I think this themes of sustainability is as high, as I said, as it is for us.
Okay.
Only thing, it goes so fast, much faster than in Europe. A building is built within a minute, and then you have another city. So that's not changing, I think.
2 minutes, maybe. Let's ask Jan to come back and talk, the three of us, about the two presentations we've just seen. Jan, you also looked at the interiors and trends that you see happening there. And there were some views about floor covering, green came in, carpets came in. Do you recognize what Dorothé has been saying about how we at Forbo look at trends in building and design?
Well, actually, totally, because we have the same values about sustainability, of course. And I realize also that your company also has this sustainability in the core, but also the more playful fab scrap kind of floors I really like. And in my presentation there was no terrazzo, but of course terrazzo also lends itself very well for these kinds of different colorways and using scrap. So I really like that, and it looks beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Using colorways and using recycled particles to recreate a new floor, that's something that we can do with linoleum, but we can also do it, I believe, with textiles, vinyl even. Can you say a bit more about that, Dorothé?
Yes, I think reuse of material is getting more and more important. Because the moment you have this circle, this loop of production, you make your product more valuable and you have a better story to tell. So in fact, we're improving on qualities like that, like reused content in our products, but also other things that are very beneficial for a good story is like loose lay products that we in fact use to put in an interior and take away again. So this whole take back program is also something which is on top of mind at Forbo at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Jan, we are talking about building and construction and trends in our living environment. When most people hear the word trend, they often think about fashion straight away. Trends in fashion. What's the new collection? What is the connection between fashion and the built environment?
Well, of course, I think they are interacting with each other, and I see actually also interior design being more important, getting more value and getting more influence also in the fashion part. There are really two divisions that can learn from each other, and actually on the moment fashion is a little bit behind on this whole sustainability thing. Mm-hmm. It's going way too fast. I mean, all this landfill theme, I mean, we've seen all the images of all this landfill, of all this fast fashion, so that's something they really have to unlearn. Of course, there's also a lot of designers and brands who are taking up this glove and producing locally and working with dead stock, which is very important. So it's quite a balance on the moment, and actually I think the interior world is a little bit more upfront about more and more advanced in the sustainable sector.
Still, if you look at what you actually see happening, also when I look at the products that we are selling, although we show beautiful colors, we show new combinations, we show new technologies, when we look at what is actually being sold and what people are looking at, it's still often a lot of wood designs, it's still often a lot of concrete designs. How is that? How does it come that there seems to be this basis which is virtually unchanged? Dorothé, maybe first the question to you.
Yes, I think it's a good remark, Willem, that in fact the basics gives you opportunities for many other atmospheres, because if you change like the wall or if you change your furniture and your floor is basic, it makes it much easier. But what we see is in fact the basics still the same, although they become a bit warmer. So to have this warmer ambience, it's much more of today than have a cooler ambience. And that's a real shift that we see and makes it much more easy to combine other products with it. Yeah. So I think that's really good.
I think you can really see that if you look at our collections or collections of our colleagues, let's say 10 years ago and today, you actually see that there is something that is dated in there. Is that something that you recognize? Older collections?
You mean in terms of designs or?
In terms of color and design, that you say things are getting warmer now and...
Yeah, well, I think that's a big trend that even though we have a lot of designs that mimic nature, but I think it's there to give that atmosphere. We also have mammalian colors that really have this combination of different tones, this smooth floor like we have with the concrete and mammalian. I think that's the good basic, as you say, for everything. And then design opportunities, we are growing with that, as I showed already, with the pattern design, with digital printing, with aquajet. So the need of having this very neutral interior in combination with something which is very decorative, that's the perfect basics to make the choice that you actually want.
Okay. Jan, if we look at creating trends, making trends, trends developing, who is actually the main and most important character there? Is it us as individuals? Is it trendsetters and designers, or is it architects who create new buildings all over the world?
Well, of course, we get inspired by new buildings and new architects, but I think it's really a symbiosis. How trends work is that there are a lot of factors, like you said in the introduction. There's something that has to do with economy, with something with sustainability, with psychology, with politics. And this is this mix of drivers that let people want different things or need different things, so their wishes and desires. And I think people like us, who have to provide them with these new products, are tapping into it. So we're always living a little bit more in advance to try to analyze what's happening and try to facilitate that. And so actually that's how it works. You can't pinpoint to one direction about this. It's really a total mix.
There's one question I have on this for both of you, and that is one of the topics also, Jan, that you use as, let's say, one of the building blocks of your trend observations, and that is technology. In what way is technology today changing the way and the world we live in?
I think it's massively. We actually just talked before the presentation that 30 years ago, before I came onto the field, there was no technology in the form of phones and things. You can't even imagine how the world has changed. So how the world will look over 30 years. I mean, it's really, you can say something about it, but it's also going really exponentially fast, all these things. And I really value a lot of technology, and also what I showed in my presentation, all these young designers who are looking into nature, because there's the perfect technology and there's so much potential that we can still get out of that. So I really hope we focus on that part, because that's good for everybody and for the world. So get rid of fossil fuels and things like that. So I really believe, and also digitalization, I really believe is helping us to consume less and to experience more. And also there is a new playground, because there are things like they're boundless, they're infinite. So there's another. We could talk another hour about that actually.
I also see it, of course. I know it from my own company, where we are now seeing a lot more loose lay floor covering that formerly used to be adhered to the floor, otherwise it just would not function. That is a technology that we have developed. But Dorothé, are there some other examples of where technology in our textile, vinyl or Mammalian ranges have really made some changes, that we do things today that we could not do in the past?
Yeah, well, I think I already highlighted one of those, which is the flexible furniture linoleum, which is really a new technology. What if we could replace leather by another product? That would be great. It would be an innovation. So I think we're constantly improving on what technology can do for us to go towards the future, because working with young students, working with somebody like Christine Meidersma, that's giving us this chance of coming to these innovations, to these new technologies. Because we made a big step from effective printing, that we can print our products. That's already a big step. But I can imagine that there are many more possibilities in new technologies, like 3D printing. Maybe we can print the floors out of a 3D machine. Who knows? I mean, we are not there yet. So many opportunities.
Of course, yes. You are making this journey from, let's say, the inner city to the outside world, to the farmland. Jan, is that something, this idea of the farmland as the place where everybody would like to live, in the meadows, surrounded by flowers and trees, is that something that is eternal, or is that a trend of today?
No, I think we call it in the trend world, we call this biophilia feeling, that this natural born feeling that we have love for nature. And I think it's like in our genes, so that's quite natural. But I see it actually also that we want to, and you see it also in reality, that the cities are getting more greener. We're getting less cars, we're getting more green buildings, like Bosco Verticale in Milano. Dorothé already had some buildings in her presentation. So this is actually, this blurring of landscape is something I think we'll see more. Because we also want to have the benefits of an urban surroundings of all the cultural life that we love, and I think that's the new model which we are striving towards.
If you look at that holistic view, Dorothé, and if I look at Forbo Flooring Systems and all the collections that we have, I think you can say they used to be separate collections, but now also here there is much more of a holistic view. I know that we're more looking at the building as an entity rather than a separate room next to another room. Can you say something about that? The dynamics of a building?
That's one of the main topics that we discuss with the designers, and that we want to bring across to our audience as a message, that we have a dynamics of a building philosophy. And that means that in fact every building, no matter what, if it's a hospital or if it's educational, that it has these same dynamics. So we see a much more symbiosis from one building to the other. You always have an entrance, you always have an area where people meet, you always have a moving area. So I think this story of dynamics of a building is helping us to create this synergy in the way we develop our collections, because it's this one story.
Are we more conscious of us as persons, as people in society, than we were in the past? Dorothé?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think we're more conscious. Yes, well, I mean, we've heard in time that the people were, the people was the main person, very egocentric. But now we are very open. We want to relate to others, and I think that's at the moment is going on. Have more this group feeling, belonging to something, and
Is that also something that you see, Jan, when you look at your way of looking at trends, that human behavior, our emotions, using our spaces is becoming more important than it was in the past?
For sure.
Yeah, I think so too, and also because we have such big challenges at the moment. We have to be more collective about our future plans. So that I think is also a big reason for our joint efforts to tackle these problems. I really think so, yeah.
Do we move from trends in a sort of circular way that we say there are Scandinavian trends, there are Italian trends, there is North America, there's Japan. Is that a moving entity, or are there clear spearheads, Jan, where you can say, well, really what is important now is this idea of sustainability, or this idea of using the farmyard, or as Dorothé calls it?
But I think that sustainability has moved, because we were talking in the beginning, in the 90s, we talked about sustainability, but then it was always about the grey socks and the muesli granola kind of types. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely changed. We can have sustainability in all kinds of variations and styles. So it can be very decorative and festive, and you can have also. So that changed a lot, that we have sustainability on every level. So we still have the minimal Scandinavian and the more posh Mediterranean style perhaps, and they all can be sustainable. So it's a trend that's hovering above all the other trends that are playing up more or less.
Which I think is very good, because after all that is one of the most important things that are facing us today. To live in an environment that is sustainable, to be happy in our workplaces, in our homes that are sustainable, not for us, for our children, our grandchildren, but that is one of the most important themes where I hope trends are going to lead us to. This is it for today. It's 5 o'clock, so we've come to the end of this webinar. I would like to thank our two guests, Jan Agelink and Dorothé Kessels, for their view on trends in building and construction. I would like to thank you as listeners and viewers. This webinar is recorded, so we will release it in about 4 days' time. You can see all the credits, you can see the links to our trend reports, to Jan's website, to Forbo's website. If there are questions, you can pose them still. For now, we have answered all your questions. Thank you very much for listening and viewing, and see you at the beginning of the summer. Bye-bye.